several No Kings protests planned across the country on Saturday as well. What are your thoughts on those?
What do they call it? No Kings?
No Kings.
I don't feel like a king. I have to go through hell to get stuff approved. A king would say, I'm not going to get this. A king would have never had the California mandate to even be talking to him. He wouldn't have to call up Mike Johnson and Thune and say, fellas, you got to pull this off, and after years we get it done. No, we're not a king. We're not a king at all.
The law that the Trump administration is using to deploy the National Guard says this. It says the president has the power to deploy the National Guard to a state in any of three circumstances. First of all, if there's an invasion or a danger of invasion. That's not in play here. Second of all, if there's a rebellion or danger of rebellion, Trump did cite that in his order. And then third, a sort of catch-all if the president is unable with regular forces to execute the laws of the United States. Trump cited that as well. The catch, and this is what California in their lawsuit really seizes on, there's language at the end that says orders for these purposes, deploying the National Guard, shall be issued through the governors of the state. So the main argument California makes in this lawsuit is, well, this was not issued through the governor, through Gavin Newsom. This was Donald Trump directly to the National Guard. Now, I can tell you what the response is going to be. We haven't seen it yet, but the Trump administration is going to say that's just a technicality. It's really the president's call, and there's no way this law intends to say that the governor can essentially override or cancel the president's order. And I'll tell you what the answer is. The answer is we don't know. Because this particular statute has only ever been invoked one prior time in American history. There have been other incidents of the Insurrection Act. That's not what we're talking about here. This specific lawsuit was only invoked once. It was in 1970, and it involved a postal worker strike where Richard Nixon deputized the National Guard to deliver the mail. So a very different scenario. That one didn't even go to the court. So we are really in unknown territory here.
All right, guys, so we have some news to talk about in regards to the legal battle between California Governor Gavin Newsom and President Trump when it comes to President Trump deploying the National Guard in the military to protect ICE agents as they carry out the mass deportations. Because as we all saw, the mass deportations have triggered the left-wing extremists, the communists, who have now resorted to committing acts of violence against ICE agents in order to stop the mass deportations of the illegal immigrants that they love so much, okay? And we got to talk about an update on this legal battle because a Democrat judge, Mr. Charles Breyer, who is actually the brother of Stephen Breyer, a former Supreme Court justice, also a liberal activist, he is essentially ruled that President Trump must return back control of the National Guard to Gavin Newsom, essentially arguing that there is no invasion by foreign nations, there is no rebellion or serious armed insurrection, and that the protests didn't fit the defined terms for what he would say is an organized, armed, open resistance aimed at overthrowing the federal government, even though, I mean, clearly, in my opinion, I think that is what we saw. But, you know, this judge disagrees and says that the procedural violations of what happened was that, hey, he had to go through the governor, okay? And because Gavin Newsom was not consulted before deploying the National Guard, that this is a violation of the 10th Amendment, okay, which prevents the federal government from commandeering state forces without permission, right? So basically, he's saying that he disagrees with President Trump's reasoning behind deploying the National Guard and that he should have consulted Gavin Newsom before deploying the National Guard to protect ICE agents, okay? This is what the judge ruled. Take a look.
Here in San Francisco in about 10 to 15 minutes. A reminder, this is all happening in real time. Just received the ruling from that judge granting California's application for a temporary restraining order. Let me tell you exactly what that means by reading this to you. At this early stage of the proceedings, the court must determine whether the president followed the congressionally mandated procedure for his actions. He did not. The judge goes on to say he must therefore return control of the California National Guard to the governor of the state of California. So at this stage, a major victory in this court for the Governor Newsom and the state of California. What we do know is this will be appealed immediately by the Department of Justice, and this could make its way all the way up to the Supreme Court. But at this point, this federal judge in San Francisco ruling in favor of Governor Newsom and the state of California, saying President Trump did not follow the Constitution as it pertains to taking control of the National Guard. Mike?
So, Greg, let me just throw this out there as we are on the fly with this right now, just learning about this ruling. Is it your understanding, what you just read, that the judge ruled the entire deployment illegal, meaning that this is not just about the National Guard protecting federal property in Los Angeles?
Yeah, Mike, I can tell you what I heard in court today in that 75 minutes without going through this entire order with the time that we have. Yeah. But in court today, what was made very clear by the judge, he said, I'm not concerned about this temporary restraining order you're asking for. I'm concerned about this entire issue of Title X. Did President Trump follow the proper procedure in order to federalize the California National Guard? And what I'm reading just in the first 2 lines of this ruling is he's decided the Trump administration did not. Now, how quickly and applicable this is for the National Guard to remove themselves from L.A. remains to be seen, and certainly a conversation that will happen over the next few hours and days here.
What about the 700 Marines? Is that in play here?
Yeah, and again, in court today, the judge said, I don't even want to touch the Marines because I want to initially talk about the National Guard. Now that we have an initial ruling as it pertains to those 4,000 National Guardsmen that were deployed, now the conversation moves not only to the Marines, but how applicable this is in the days moving forward and how quickly the U.S. government will challenge this ruling on behalf of President Trump.
And what's your take right now in San Francisco? Are we going to hear from Governor Newsom at all tonight?
Yeah, we have been told by his staff, Mike, that in the next 10 minutes since this ruling has been issued, that inside the state Supreme Court building here behind me, we expect to hear from the governor about this major order in his favor tonight.
All right. Greg Lee with the breaking news there in San Francisco. Greg, we appreciate.
Yeah, so you see that, you heard that. Okay, now a court has stayed this order, okay, until 12 p.m. tomorrow. So at 12 p.m., essentially, command of the National Guard in California will be given back over to Gavin Newsom, presumably, unless something happens. The Trump administration has already appealed, okay, this decision, okay? So it's already been appealed, and it's something that definitely is going to go up to the Supreme Court, okay? But again, I want you guys to understand the precedent that is being set here by this liberal activist judge, which is that basically the president cannot use the National Guard and the military to protect federal forces from being attacked by domestic terrorists, right? By domestic extremists who don't like mass deportations, okay? Even when the leaders of the state and the local governments are failing to protect federal agents, right? So when Democrats aren't doing their jobs, right? When local law enforcement can't do their jobs because of Democrats not letting them do their jobs, the judge says, you know what, that's totally fine, right? Just let the domestic terrorists attack federal agents, right? That's essentially the result of his decision, right? That is what he decided. So with that being said, Gavin Newsom has responded to this decision, so let's listen in to what he has to say about it.
Press conference, not dissimilar to this, and express himself by simply asking a question, and was handcuffed, was thrown down to the ground in the United States Center. And anyone that knows Alex Padilla knows one thing about Alex Padilla. He's one of the most mild-mannered, decent people you'll meet. And that's not, don't just take my word for it. Folks on the other side of the aisle would acknowledge that. I thought it was a disgrace. I want to make this clear. The National Guard will come back under my authority by noon tomorrow. The National Guard will be redeployed to what they were doing before Donald Trump commandeered them. The National Guard will go back to border security, working on counter-drug enforcement and fentanyl enforcement, which they were taken off by Donald Trump. The National Guard will go back to working on what we refer to as the rattlesnake teams, doing vegetation and forest management, which Donald Trump took them off in preparation for wildfire season. The National Guard, men and women, will go back to their day jobs, which include law enforcement, that he took them off the job.
This guy.
Just want you to all absorb what I just said. By the way, you don't have to absorb it. You'll have an opportunity to review that in the 36-page order from Justice Breyer that laid that out. and they'll come back under the rightful command of the governor of the state of California.
Yeah, so you see that, you heard that. Again, complete and total clown show. This will be appealed. It'll go up to the Supreme Court. I don't know how this is going to work out. I just think that it is a dangerous precedent to essentially say that the president can't stop these Democrat governors from allowing their states to burn to the ground, right, because of domestic extremists. They're afraid of the lunatic radicals in their base. I also don't think it's a good precedent to set when you talk about allowing these people to attack federal agents who are simply doing their jobs. But again, this is the world that we live in, where judges are totally fine with chaos and anarchy as long as they can stick it to Trump, right? The real constitutional crisis in this country is the judicial branch deciding that they actually run the country. Okay, so we're going to see exactly how the president responds to this, if he's even going to follow this order from this judge, or, you know, is he going to play along and, you know, work it out all the way up to the Supreme Court. But it is kind of crazy to think about a district court judge basically telling the president that he does not have command over the military, right? That he has to give command of the military back over to a governor, right? Basically, that's what this judge is doing. I want people to understand that this judge is basically trying to take away control of the military from the president of the United States. That is what's happening in this country. But meanwhile, while the judge is trying to take away the president's ability to protect federal agents, okay, and to establish law and order, you have the left-wing extremists planning what they're saying is going to be the largest protest ever, nationwide protest ever against President Trump, called No King's Day, right? And they're going on TikTok, on the internet, giving out instructions on, you know, what to do and how to go about this massive protest against the president, which also happens to be on a day in which there's going to be a military parade in celebration of, I think, the Army's 250th birthday and President Trump's birthday as well, too. Take a look.
No King's Day is June 14th. If you plan on protesting, here are some things you may need to know. Cover all your tattoos. If you got to wear long sleeves in the heat, do that shit. Do not wear paraphernalia. Wear everything plain. If you got to wear all black, wear all black. But do not wear anything that they could scan and find you in another picture with. Stay hydrated, because it's going to get hot outside. Make sure you pack protein bars and water. Water to clear your eyes if there's smoke bombs going off, and for you to hydrate yourself. If you want to, bring you some goggles. That tear gas is a bitch. Make sure you line your face with Vaseline so it doesn't seep through the goggles. Scarf to cover your mouth. You don't want to inhale all that shit. Plus, you don't want to be recognized. If you are recording, please do not record anybody that's protesting. They will look through social media pages to find you. And you don't want that type of smoke. If you plan on marching in Washington, D.C., there are barricades up everywhere. Please be mindful. He wants that smoke. Please be peaceful as you're protesting. If you're going to carry one flag, carry the other one too. Hell, I don't even like that idea. Cut the flags down the middle and sew them hoes together. That'll really piss them off. But be safe and always be with a partner. Do not go solo dolo. Have a buddy. Stay as far away from police as possible. When they tell you to back up, back the fuck up. You do not want to get arrested. You don't want to be tear gassed. You don't want to be beaten. Keep these protests as peaceful as possible so this man cannot declare martial law, because that is his goal. So he can have executive power over every state. Let's not give it to him, but make sure that y'all go out and have a good ass time. And if you can, wish Obama a happy birthday, or Kamala Harris a happy birthday, or to piss him off, Elon or JD. Everybody but him.
Protests against the Trump administration are expected to take place across the country in coming days. The event, called No King's Day, being organized by a coalition of groups that say it's in response to policies the president has enacted since taking office. Anieli Ruiz is in the newsroom with details about protests scheduled here in our area. Anieli?
Lynn, organizers say they've been planning this for months, mobilizing supporters in cities nationwide. Here in Houston, the main protest is set for downtown, but they also have demonstrations planned in Conroe, the Woodlands, Kingwood, Katy, Cypress, Sugarland, and League City. Their message, they're pushing back against what they call an increasing authoritarian administration, and the timing, they say, is no accident. They've chosen Saturday for a reason. On a day President Donald Trump ordered a military parade to celebrate the Army and President Donald Trump's 79th birthday, thousands of people will be gathering in cities across the country in a protest called No King's Day. Why Saturday?
You don't need a military parade to show off the might of the United States. That's not who we are. And that's why we're having protests across the country.
Backed by more than 200 national organizations, protesters accuse the Trump administration of undermining democracy, cracking down on freedom of speech, and detaining political opponents.
Peacefully protesting a president who is drastically overstepping his authority and trying his best to become a king. And we are not putting up with it.
President Donald Trump had this to say about the protests.
And we're going to be celebrating big on Saturday. We're going to have a lot of, and if there's any protester wants to come out, they will be met with very big force.
But political science professors say the demonstrations reflect an American tradition.
The right to protest is endemic in the Constitution. It's something people have used for generations to show their displeasure with any number of things, politicians, individual outcomes of policies, and just specific events.
Protesters are mobilizing across Houston and the suburbs. One retired woman in her 70s says recent budget cuts and policy proposals pushed her to speak out, though she asked to stay anonymous for safety reasons. What's your message this weekend? Why are you out there? Why are you going to be out there?
Terribly bad issues going on with this new bill that they call the Big Beautiful Bill. I call it the Big Bad Ugly Bill.
Now, Governor Greg Abbott announced late Tuesday that he would deploy Texas National Guard troops across the state in anticipation of protests. The organizers I talked to today say they don't agree with the governor, calling his move an intimidation tactic. Anayeli Ruiz, KHOU 11 News.
Yeah, see, now you heard that, okay? This is who the judge is siding with, right? He's siding with the domestic extremists who we know are not going to engage in peaceful protests, right? Does anybody really believe that so-called No King's Day is going to be peaceful, right? Does anybody really believe that? Okay, is there a betting market for that or on Poly Market, right? How peaceful the No King's Day protest will be? I don't think they're going to be very peaceful. I think at this point, Democrats have lost the ability, okay, to come out and say that, hey, we want to peacefully protest, because their protests are never peaceful. We've seen time and time again that these far left extremist protests always end up becoming riots, right? It's always just domestic terrorism. So no, I'm not giving them the benefit of the doubt to say, oh, well, you know, they should go out and be able to protest peacefully. It is like they don't ever protest peacefully. When they come out here and say they want to protest, these people likely are trying to commit acts of violence, right? And that's what we've seen. I think that is what we'll continue to see. But hey, let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.